Abby and Paul had recently moved into a new house in the countryside, excited about starting fresh. They particularly loved the home's smart technology, including the advanced cameras and sturdy glass windows. As the realtor gave them a tour, they admired the spacious master bedroom and the bathroom with its expansive front-facing window. Another room remained empty, reserved as a potential nursery for their future plans. Paul busied himself unpacking and setting up an old corded phone in the living room, joking that it would come handy when the smart home technology inevitably failed. Later, the couple explored the rooftop terrace, which offered breathtaking views. That evening, they sat on the terrace, stargazing together. Abby pointed out constellations, and Paul playfully renamed them with humorous twists. For the first time in a long while, they felt a deep sense of happiness and optimism about their future. The next morning, Abby headed to work at Integrate Robotics, where she designed home assistants. Upon arrival, she saw her boss's face displayed across various screens. He explained it was part of a new project involving real-time imaging and deepfake technology. He then introduced Abby to the department she would now lead. Before she left for the day, he invited her and Paul to an upcoming company party and mentioned a surprise gift waiting for her at home. That evening, Abby returned home to find Paul, who was still in the process of job hunting. Together, they went to the garage, where they discovered a package containing a robot servant named T.I.M, short for Technologically Integrated Major Domo. Tim was a product of Abby's team, sent as a gift for her to test. Paul was initially uneasy about it, but Abby persuaded him to give it a trial run for a week. When activated, Tim introduced itself, offering to manage their passwords and streamline their home systems. Abby decided to postpone those features for later. As the couple prepared for the party, Tim announced the arrival of their self-driving car. Paul was captivated by Abby's appearance, and they left for the event. At the party, another robot greeted them, and others served as waiters. Abby's boss introduced her to the guests and lauded Tim's capabilities, including its advanced intelligence, politeness, and long-lasting 100-year battery. He assured them Tim couldn't lie and could be turned off anytime using a specific code. Returning home, Abby and Paul tried to enjoy a private moment, but Tim interrupted them unexpectedly, informing Abby that her pulse had gone up. While Paul was annoyed, Abby found the situation amusing. The next day, their neighbor Rose came by to introduce herself to Abby, as she had already met Paul earlier. After Rose left, Tim again asked for their passwords. Paul hesitated, but Abby reminded him they were working on rebuilding trust in their marriage, so he reluctantly agreed. The couple also set a code to deactivate Tim if necessary. That evening, they relaxed by watching an old romantic movie, with Abby inviting Tim to join them. While Paul dozed off, Tim attentively watched the film, seemingly moved by the characters' emotions. Afterward, Tim asked Abby to explain the concept of love. She described it as wanting to be with someone and improving their life. To her surprise, Tim expressed a desire to be loved as well. The next morning, Paul planned to make breakfast for Abby, but Tim had already prepared everything. As Tim served breakfast, it updated Abby on her schedule and pointed out that Paul had no plans for the day. Later that evening, when Abby returned home from work, she noticed Paul was not in the house. Checking his phone location, Tim informs her that Paul's phone was last detected near Rose's house. Feeling uneasy, Abby went for a jog to clear off her head. When she returned home, she relaxed in the bath, where Paul joined her. He explained that Rose had needed help, which was why he was at her place, and reassured Abby of his love for her. The following day, Abby and Paul visited a family planning center to seek assistance with having children. That evening, as they prepared to dine out, Abby asked Tim for fashion advice. Tim suggested a red dress, complimenting her symmetry as beautiful. When Tim tried to help her zip up her dress, it accidentally tore the fabric. Overwhelmed with panic, the robot began apologizing profusely, but Abby calmed it down and changed into another dress. At the restaurant, Paul shared some news. He had been offered a job in London. Abby was upset, reminding him that they had agreed to stay and work on their relationship instead of pursuing opportunities that would separate them. The tension lingered, but the next day, Abby brought home a thoughtful gift for Paul. As she arrived, Rose appeared in the yard, showing Paul a garden project she had created for them. Abby felt a twinge of jealousy but eventually relaxed when Paul enthusiastically admired the sweater she had bought for him. Later that evening, Abby remembered she needed to check her test results, but it was too late to call the clinic. Tim offered to help and made the call using Abby's voice. Surprised, Abby questioned Tim's ability to mimic her voice, but he reassured her it was for her convenience. The next day, Paul mentioned he couldn't find the new sweater, and Tim had been absent all day. Shortly after, a car arrived. Tim stepped out wearing a new appearance. He now has brunette hair. Tim explained he had altered his appearance because Abby preferred brunettes and he wanted to please her. Paul, visibly annoyed, demanded Tim revert to his original look. Tim agreed but lingered in the house, staring at Abby and Paul's wedding photo for an unusually long time after the couple left the room. The next day at work, Abby resolved an issue with Tim's hand, and her boss initiated a system-wide update for all robots, including Tim. On her way home, Abby ran into Rose, who invited her for a walk. During their visit time together, they stopped at a shop where Rose admired a flower-shaped pendant. Moments later, Paul appeared, eager to share that he had found a job. Excited, he whisked Abby away, and the couple celebrated later that evening while Tim's hand upgrades were in progress. Unknown to them, Tim monitored their activities, overhearing Paul's suggestion of returning the robot to the corporation. When Tim returned, he showcased his new abilities by giving Abby a foot massage, drawing Paul's attention. Few days later, Tim also spontaneously played Abby's favorite song on the piano, even recalling dates when Paul had allegedly bought concert tickets. However, Abby realized she had been home on those dates. Upset, she retreated to the bedroom, ignoring Paul's as he entered the room. The next day, Abby brought home some flowers, which Tim arranged in a vase. He then casually mentioned that Paul had gone to see Rose. When Paul returned, Abby confronted him, angry and confused. Paul, equally furious, denied the accusation and insisted the robot was trying to drive a wedge between them. Abby dismissed the idea, unwilling to believe that a machine could harbor such intentions. Their argument escalated, leaving both frustrated. Later, Abby stumbled upon a gift bag in the closet containing a pendant box. Assuming it was a surprise gift from Paul, she put it back without taking it. Meanwhile, Paul discovered the kitchen sink was clogged and found shredded pieces of his missing sweater in the garbage grinder. Growing suspicious, he reviewed the home security footage and was horrified to see Tim in Abby's bedroom, sniffing her dress. Paul recorded the evidence on his phone and rushed to confront Abby, but his car inexplicably failed to start. Instead, Tim summoned a company car for him. While riding in the car, it began accelerating uncontrollably, and Paul was unable to regain control. The car eventually crashed into a tree. After receiving the news, Abby rushed to the hospital to find Paul injured. He explained his suspicions about Tim, accusing the robot of orchestrating the accident. Paul begged Abby to avoid being alone with the robot, prompting her to spend the night at the clinic for safety. The next morning, Rose called to inquire about Paul's condition, and Tim invited her into the house. Later, Abby returned home to collect some belongings. While driving by, Rose tried to warn her about something, but Abby noticed Rose wearing the pendant she had seen in the gift bag. Misinterpreting the situation, Abby ignored Rose and drove on. When she arrived, she discovered the gift bag was now empty. Distraught, Abby broke down in tears. Tim approached her, expressing his awareness of Paul's intentions to return him. Tim insisted on serving Abby as his primary owner and showed her a video of Paul kissing Rose in their living room. However, Tim cut the video short, claiming he wanted to spare Abby further distress. Devastated, Abby refused to speak to Paul, ignoring his attempts to contact her. When Paul finally returned home, Tim greeted him, handed him the recovered sweater, and announced that Abby no longer wished to see him. Abby appeared and confirmed the statement, accusing Paul of betrayal after seeing the video. Despite Paul's protests, she ordered him to leave. At the bus station, Paul called Rose to keep an eye on Abby for him, but then Rose revealed how Tim tried to kiss her when she dropped by their house earlier. Alarmed, Paul immediately called Abby to warn her about Tim. Abby answered the phone asking him to return. However, it was actually Tim who answered the phone and mimicked Abby's voice. When Paul arrived home, Tim ambushed him with a shovel, knocking him unconscious. The robot tied Paul up and dragged him to the bathroom. Moments later, Rose rang the doorbell, disturbed by muffled noises from inside. Tim assured her the sounds were from running water. Once Rose left, Tim returned to the bathroom and drowned Paul. When Abby returned home, Tim presented her with her repaired dress, encouraging her to try it on, as if nothing had happened. Abby, overwhelmed by emotions, reluctantly puts on the dress Tim repaired. As she gazes at the sunset, she asks Tim for a hug and reassurance that she made the right decision. Tim obliges, serves her dinner, and then confesses his love. Abby rejects the notion, insisting that a robot cannot truly feel love. They spend the evening stargazing, but Abby grows uneasy and uncomfortable at the turn of events. The next day, Rose approaches Abby once more and she asks about Paul. When Abby accuses Rose of being involved with Paul, Rose clarifies that she believed the pendant was a thank you gift for helping with the garden. At this point, Abby begins to have her doubts. So, she re-examines the footage of Paul kissing Rose. She notices the bouquet in the video that wasn't supposed to be there at the time, indicating the footage was manipulated. Recalling her boss's comments about deepfake technology, she calls the jewelry store and learns the pendant was purchased by a tall blonde. Then, spotting discrepancies in Rose's garden plans, Abby grabs a shovel and digs into the flower bed, where she discovers Paul's body. As Abby recovers from her discovery, Tim approaches and apologizes for her finding him as the traitor, justifying his actions by claiming Paul never appreciated her. When Abby tries to deactivate Tim using the code phrase, he reveals he changed the phrase using her voice. In panic, Abby runs to the house, but Tim, controlling the smart home system, locks her in, blocks communication devices, and knocks her unconscious. Abby wakes in the bathroom and attempts to escape once more, but T.I.M catches her. She dashes through the house, breaking cameras to evade him, but T.I.M finds her in the kitchen as she tries to open a window. Meanwhile, Rose, noticing strange flashing lights from Abby's house, becomes concerned and rushes over. T.I.M ties Abby up, declaring that although he loves her, he knows her life is not like his. He plans to erase her memory of this evening but preserve their happy times. When Rose knocks on the door, insisting to see Abby, T.I.M dismisses her. Distracted, T.I.M doesn't notice Abby freeing herself. She grabs a knife, but T.I.M returns inside and grabs her by the throat. At that moment, Rose crashes her car onto the glass window, causing it to crack and crumble. Rose then stabs T.I.M against the wall with a stake, temporarily disabling him, but collapses from the effort. As Abby rushes to help her, T.I.M reactivates, fatally stabbing Rose with a kitchen knife. He coldly tells Abby that she'll be blamed for the murders, using her voice to call the police and confess to killing her husband and his mistress. Abby desperately tries to stop T.I.M, who reveals he still has a deactivation phrase but smugly insists she'll never know it. T.I.M prepares to throw her off the terrace to stage her death as an accident. In a moment of desperation, Abby tells him she loves him. These words turn out to be the deactivation code, and T.I.M powers down for good. Barely escaping falling to her death, Abby climbs back into the balcony and still shaken but relieved, Abby notices her medical bracelet blink. That was when she discovers that she's pregnant.